Daniel and I had been in a relationship for 10 years, breaking up and getting back together. Endlessly entangled. We were part of every major event in each other's lives. I knew all his quirks, and he had seen every disgraceful side of me. On our 10th anniversary, he finally got down on one knee in front of both our friends and proposed to me. During dinner, I saw a message he sent to some girl. I don't love her, but I have to take responsibility for her. Do you understand? I don't understand. Last night in bed, you said the one you couldn't live without was me. You say you have to take responsibility for her, that you're going to marry her, then what about me? What am I to you? You're the one I love. Isn't that enough? I quietly finished the wine in my glass and told Daniel I needed to use the restroom. My phone was left on the table. My coat still hung on the back of the chair. In my bowl were the shrimp Daniel had peeled for me. In the upside-down wine glass lay the engagement ring I had worn for less than an hour. I never went back. Daniel, I've said we should break up many times, but the ones who truly leave never say goodbye. Chapter 1. While at work, I received a photo from a friend in a well-known, high-end jewelry store. Daniel was helping a young, beautiful woman pick out a ring. My friend didn't say a word, but I could guess what she was thinking. She suspected Daniel was cheating, yet feared it might just be a misunderstanding. I replied with a single period, to let her know I'd seen it. At exactly 6 o'clock, Daniel came to pick me up from work as usual. We had dinner together, went home together, slept together. Then, in the dead of night, Daniel Chan got dressed and left again. I lay in bed, listening to the sound of the door closing, then sat up and lit a cigarette. This was my 10th year with Daniel, but I'd long lost count of how many times he had cheated. When I first got together with him, I actually anticipated he would cheat. After all, I'd known from the beginning that he was a playboy, and I had never planned for a future with him. But we kept breaking up and making up, tangled together until now. To be honest, this relationship wasn't entirely unsalvageable. At our age, most of our friends already have families. Whatever energy they have left after work is divided between their husbands and their children. Gone are the days of spontaneous travel. Sometimes I get lonely too, and I need someone to eat with, to chat about meaningless things, and to fulfill physical needs. And Daniel and I know each other inside out. We've known each other for so many years that I don't need to put up any fronts in front of him. If I give him up, I might find someone younger, better looking, more accomplished, but it would likely be hard to find that same sense of ease I feel when I'm with him. I exhaled a long plume of smoke and finally stubbed out the cigarette. I'm not even sure what kind of feelings I have for Daniel anymore. I only know that, at some point, I stopped caring about his flirting, his cheating, his indifference. Daniel is a charming scumbag. I only need to enjoy the emotional value he brings me. The rest doesn't really matter. Life is short, might as well enjoy it while you can. It's just that, occasionally, during quiet nights like this, I find myself briefly detaching from this clarity and think of the younger version of me. It seems like I've gotten everything I once dreamed of: a stable job, a handsome salary, a decent lifestyle, and yet, everything feels far from what I once imagined. Chapter 2. For once, I felt a trace of curiosity about Daniel and that woman. These days, Daniel and I interact like an old married couple. He doesn't guard himself around me. He's quite certain I wouldn't break up with him over those flings and flirts outside. So it didn't take much effort for me to find out who she was. Her name is Diana Mao. In Daniel's phone, she's saved as a tiny snowflake emoji. I tapped her profile photo. It was her clinging affectionately to Daniel's neck. The two of them posing with peace signs for the camera. Daniel never deletes his chat history, so I saw everything: them at amusement parks, camping trips, cooking meals together. Last month, when Daniel went on a business trip abroad, he even took a detour to accompany Diana to see the Swiss Alps. Sometimes I think, the process of a man and a woman getting close always follows the same steps. It starts with dinners out, then moves on to grocery shopping and cooking at home. And in the end, very few grow old together, most just drift apart. On Friday night, I got a call from Daniel. He said something had come up and he wouldn't be spending the weekend with me. That's how our relationship works now. Not too clingy. He says something came up, and I don't ask questions, but I knew what that something was. Normally, I would have spent the weekend going to yoga and then to the spa. I don't know what got into me, but I called Colin, Daniel's childhood friend. He picked up quickly. I didn't waste time. Do you know where Daniel is going this weekend? Is he taking Diana on a little weekend trip? From their recent messages, I had seen Diana mention wanting to take a short getaway. Daniel hadn't agreed at the time. The other end of the line went quiet for 2 seconds. Then Colin answered, "Yeah, I know, we're going together." Then he asked me, "Want me to book you a room too?" Since someone else was paying, I didn't care. "Sure, go ahead." He sent me the location soon after. It was a nearby tourist spot, and this weekend just happened to be a fireworks festival, the perfect romantic setting. I asked who else was going and found out it was just a few of Daniel's buddies. Most were bringing girlfriends. Those who weren't, well, with their looks and money, finding one last minute wouldn't be hard. There's a saying, birds of a feather flock together. Daniel is a scumbag, and naturally, his bros are no better. In their little rich boy circle, this kind of behavior is common, and I've been soaking in this kind of life for so long. I've come to accept these unwritten, immoral codes that don't exactly break the law. By the time I arrived at the hotel, it was already late. The fireworks show was about to begin. I stepped out of the car and tossed the keys to the valet, only to see Colin waiting at the hotel entrance. I paused for 2 seconds, then walked toward him. "Why aren't you watching the fireworks?" He shrugged nonchalantly. "Not really into that stuff." "Then why bother coming? The hot springs here are nice, and besides, if I hadn't come today, wouldn't I have missed the chance to run into you?" Chapter 3. Because of Daniel. I've known his group of bros for many years, but aside from adding each other on social media, the message threads have been dead for ages. Most of them begin and end with that one line, "Hi, I'm XX. Colin was the exception. He liked me, and from the very beginning, he never tried to hide it. In their eyes, as long as it's consensual, sharing a woman among brothers isn't a big deal. Every time Daniel Chan and I broke up, Colin would enthusiastically show up, trying to get me to give him a shot. I never responded. It wasn't because I was particularly moral and refused to go after my ex's friend, I just didn't see the point. Daniel and I kept breaking up and getting back together because we were deeply entangled. There was too much emotional residue, but I wasn't desperate enough to be unable to live without a man. That's why I didn't mind Daniel having other women. Part of it was fatigue from all these years. The other part was fairness. In this, Daniel and I were equals. If I wanted, I could do exactly what he did, and he wouldn't care. The suite Colin booked had a nice view. From the balcony, you could even catch a glimpse of the fireworks in the distance. I set down my luggage and sat on the balcony chair. Deciding to enjoy the show, Colin lounged on the other chair, asking why I suddenly cared about Daniel's love life. "I'm still Daniel's official girlfriend, aren't I? Am I not allowed to care? You don't need to overthink it. We can all see it. Daniel's just chasing something new with Diana. It won't threaten your position as the queen." I nodded. "I know. So then, why did you really come here?" Leaning my head against my hand, I said lazily, "It's been a while since I saw Daniel act like a man in love." Got a bit curious. Colin laughed. "If you want to see what a man in love looks like, you could have just looked at me. Never one to miss a chance to pitch himself." I asked Colin what it was about me he liked. He thought for a long time, then shrugged helplessly. "I don't know. Maybe it's the old you always want what you can't have. Let me have you once, maybe I'll stop." I laughed. "Then you'd better stay restless for life." So cruel. Don't you think it's unfair? Daniel is out there screwing around. Why should you stay faithful? I'm not staying faithful for him. The air turned quiet. In the faint sounds of fireworks beyond the hills, I watched a lonely light show end. Colin handed me his phone. In their little group chat, someone had posted photos and short videos. Among them was Daniel and Diana, kissing intimately. The way Daniel looked at Diana, it was full of tenderness. Exactly the same as how he used to look at me in the beginning. Chapter 4. I met Daniel for the first time in our final year of high school. The Chan family had some trouble, so Daniel was sent back to his hometown and transferred to our school. A senior year transfer student was rare enough, but one covered in designer labels, with an unmistakable air of confidence, stood out like a sore thumb in our small town school. As class president, I was assigned by the teacher to be Daniel's deskmate. That gave me a natural advantage in getting close to him. I liked him at the time, but that wasn't anything special. I was sure 100% of the girls in class liked Daniel. Not necessarily romantically, people are naturally drawn to beauty. Daniel wasn't a top student, but wealthy families never rely on college entrance exams to shape their future. So while I was buried in textbooks, Daniel had already blended in with everyone, even started dating. Eventually, I guess he got bored and set his sights on me. At first, I ignored him, but the pressure from school and family was suffocating. My subconscious screamed that I was about to collapse, that I needed an outlet. So I accepted Daniel Chan. He had a lot of dating experience, so being with him felt good. For the first time in a long while, I felt relaxed. After the college entrance exams, I got into my dream university, and Daniel's family resolved their issues, so he was going back. As expected, I was a little sad, but it passed quickly. I adjusted. I'd always known we came from different worlds, we could only be temporary in each other's lives. The day he left, I was working a summer job at a factory to earn my tuition. He came to the factory and gave me a designer bag. He said it was his habit, every girl he dated got a bag. I couldn't break his tradition. I took it. That night, after work, I opened the bag out of curiosity and found 100,000 yuan inside, along with a note. Stop working, take some time to prepare, get your driver's license, change your look, go see the ocean you've always dreamed of, get ready for university. For a split second, a strange feeling flickered through my heart, but it disappeared too fast for me to hold on to. I didn't think much of it, until I ran into him again at university. He pulled up in a flashy sports car, dramatically took off his sunglasses, and looked at me with a grin. Yo, ex-girlfriend, long time no see. Right then, I had a faint premonition. I was done for. There was a very good chance I was going to fall for him all over again. Chapter 5. The first time I realized my feelings for Daniel had changed was during the second semester of freshman year. I heard from someone else that he was getting hot and heavy with a senior girl. My first reaction was a deep, gut-wrenching sense of betrayal. So I confronted him, a dramatic, messy argument where we threw blame at each other like grenades. I couldn't accept his fickleness, his wandering heart. Daniel, on the other hand, said he never asked me to be loyal, so why should I expect him to be? We ended things in the ugliest way possible, blocked and deleted each other from every platform. When we ran into each other at school, I'd go out of my way to avoid him. I was heartbroken, truly, but most people in this world, as long as they're alive, will have to go through heartbreak sooner or later. I kept going to class, kept working part-time. Aside from crying into my pillow every night and losing a few pounds, I wasn't too affected. Daniel still popped up in my life from time to time. He was hard to miss, always glowing with charm, from gritted teeth to indifference. It took me about 2 months. Then one night, on my way back from a tutoring session, I was attacked by a thief on a motorcycle who tried to snatch my bag, dragging me several meters along the pavement. The abrasions on my left side stretched from calf to thigh. I called the police, called an ambulance, and contacted a close friend. But the first person to show up was Daniel. I sat on the curb and locked eyes with him. I thought I looked tough and unbothered. But Daniel later told me my eyes were so red and watery that he was sure if he spoke even one word, my tears would fall in big, heavy drops. So he just sighed, gently avoided my injuries, and carried me to the hospital. He handled the registration, got the meds, and when the disinfectant stung so badly I was trembling, he held my head tightly and tried to soothe me. After I was discharged, Daniel arranged all my meals for me. Since he couldn't come into the girls' dorm, he ordered meals for 4 people and asked my roommates to take extra care of me. He never asked about my class schedule, but every time I stepped out for class, he was already downstairs waiting. Eventually, even my roommates switched sides, urging me to give him another chance. We stayed in that ambiguous stage for a while, half resisting, half accepting. We got back together. At the time, I was still rational enough to swear it was the last chance I'd give Daniel. But of course, I had no idea that was only the beginning of our decade-long entanglement. Chapter 6. The weekend was just 2 short days, so I only had 2 days to observe Daniel and Diana together. It was obvious Diana was completely immersed in the relationship, her face always glowing with a sweet, content smile. Daniel doted on her too, rarely taking his eyes off her except when he briefly replied to my messages. Colin said Daniel was just chasing novelty, but as someone who's been through it, I knew it wasn't that simple. He had feelings for her, that much was clear. Given time, Diana just might take my place. Colin kept sending me photos of Daniel and Diana being affectionate, but always followed them up with a line like, "Still not as good as you." A crude attempt at stirring things up, but repetition has its effect. I put my phone away, and in the gaps between watching them, I allowed myself to enjoy this rare holiday. I sampled the hotel's signature dishes, and even tried the hot springs Colin wouldn't shut up about. They really were great. Colin never missed a chance to offer himself up. When he found out I was soaking in the hot spring, he immediately sent me a photo of himself in swimwear. 8-pack abs. In your face bragging. He said he was ready to serve me loyally, in any way I wished. For a moment, I was tempted, but reason returned quickly, and I put my phone down. Once the vacation ended, my life went back to how it always was. Daniel managed his time well. His romantic bliss with Diana didn't interfere with his time with me. At his place, I noticed red-circled dates on his calendar and found a receipt for a diamond ring. I said nothing. A friend messaged me, asking, subtly, whether I'd gotten to the bottom of everything. I told her, yes. I knew the truth now. She knew Daniel and I were still together, so she assumed she'd misunderstood the situation and immediately relaxed. Then she added, if Daniel bought a ring, it must be to propose to you. You've been together for 10 years already. It's about time for a happy ending. My kid's old enough to run errands now. She had always worried we wouldn't last. Daniel didn't seem like the settling down type, and I never pressured him either. She tried to persuade me, said all men need a push, told me not to give Daniel too much freedom. I always nodded along, but never actually changed anything. That Wednesday night, after we made love, Daniel said he was going on a business trip in a couple of days. I nodded sleepily. Okay, I'm heading back to my hometown anyway. He paused, then realized what I meant. It was almost my mother's death anniversary. Every year, I return home at this time. Daniel didn't say anything, but that Friday, when I got off work, I saw his car parked outside my office again. I stopped in my tracks and asked, weren't you going on a business trip? Delaying it by a day or two won't matter. He said, I still want to go back with you. Daniel once promised me he would never let me visit my mother's grave alone. So many of his declarations over the years have turned hollow, faded into lies, but not that one. That one. He's never broken. Sometimes I think, maybe this is why Daniel and I made it this far. He knows exactly where my bottom line is. Chapter 7. With Daniel Chan by my side, the journey home no longer felt so lonely. My mother's grave sat atop a tall mountain. From there, the vast, rolling hills stretched into the horizon, and the sky felt so close, the blue, the clouds, all seemingly within reach. I placed fresh flowers in front of her tombstone, lit candles, and burned joss paper. Daniel knelt down and solemnly bowed 3 times. His eyes were shut, lips murmuring something softly. He'd only met my mother once, when she was seriously ill. That was long after our 3rd breakup. By then, I had fully accepted Daniel's philandering nature and resolved to cut ties for good. Since it was a peaceful breakup, we'd kept each other's contact info, though we hadn't spoken since. Then, out of the blue, I got a call from my hometown. My mother had been hospitalized. It was serious. The local hospital couldn't take her, and advised me to bring her to a larger city for treatment. My father was a disaster, a lifelong drunk and abuser. Later, as alcohol hollowed him out, he no longer had the strength to throw punches and simply became a useless leech who only knew how to beg for money. I've reflected on it. Maybe the reason I was able to tolerate Daniel's disloyalty was because I had my father for comparison. Next to a man who used violence on women, Daniel's infidelity felt like nothing. All those years of struggle, trying to earn money, to climb higher, it was always just so I could give my mother a better life. She'd suffered enough. I took emergency leave and dragged my mother through multiple hospitals, but without connections. We had to wait forever for a bed. In the end, A roommate said she had a distant relative, a department head at a top-tier hospital, and managed to get my mother admitted. But I knew the real connection was Daniel. I don't know if he treated his other ex-girlfriends the same way, but in that moment, I owed him. The doctor reviewed my mother's test results and said honestly that the prognosis wasn't good. I needed to prepare myself. My mother kept saying she didn't want treatment anymore, that she wanted to go home, but I was terrified. I was afraid that if she left, I'd be truly alone in the world, so I begged the doctors to use the best drugs, to try every possible method. But nothing worked. Daniel must have heard about her condition from the doctor. He reached out, saying he wanted to visit. It was our first contact in half a year after the breakup, and I agreed. My mother was thrilled to see him. She misunderstood our relationship and held Daniel's hand, chatting endlessly. Daniel responded to her every word and encouraged her to stay positive and keep fighting. Before leaving, he handed me a bank card. I hesitated for a long time before taking it. Reality humbles us all. I hated to admit it, but in moments of weakness, I really did rely on Daniel. Still, I wasn't able to keep my mother. Her condition worsened quickly, facing death. She insisted on being discharged. She said if she had to die, she'd rather do it at home, not in a hospital. I had no choice. I arranged a vehicle and kept her breathing with oxygen the entire 20-hour trip from the city to the village. I didn't dare close my eyes the whole way. When we got home, she sat on the chair she'd used for decades. Within minutes, she closed her eyes peacefully. Her pain was finally over, and I was left, motherless. The funeral was a mess. My father took no responsibility. I'd been away studying for years and didn't know the local customs. I wore mourning clothes but, as a daughter, wasn't even allowed to keep vigil. Relatives and neighbors came and went. My father, knowing I wouldn't support him now that my mother was gone, questioned me in front of everyone about the inheritance. She had left me a small sum, only a few thousand yuan, all of which I spent on the funeral. But my father didn't listen. He grabbed my arm, demanding money. I knelt on the cold floor, surrounded by relatives trying to defuse the situation, telling him to wait until after the funeral, reminding him I'd always been a good child. But my father was too strong. He shook them off and raised his hand to hit me. At the last second, Daniel stepped in and shielded me. He had betrayed me many times, but in that moment, he appeared like a god descending from the heavens. Chapter 8. I don't know how Daniel found this place. Because of my father, I'd never brought any friends home. All they knew was the general region, not the exact address. But Daniel showed up anyway, after taking a flight, a high-speed train, a long-distance bus, and asking countless strangers. At the time, we weren't even together anymore. He had already gone above and beyond, finding a doctor, securing a hospital bed, covering the medical bills. If there were a competition for best ex-boyfriend in the world, he would win, no question. But still, he came. He gave my father money to calm him down, took the burdens from my shoulders, and, posing as my future husband, helped receive guests and kept vigil through the night. In those silent hours, I lay wide awake, tearless from exhaustion, my head resting on Daniel's shoulder, staring at my mother's photo. Daniel held my hand, fingers interlaced. He said, "You still have me." Daniel Chan's betrayals never crossed my bottom line. He cheated, but I could still eat, drink, sleep. Whether I lost or kept him, I could survive. But each time he reached out a hand, it was during the lowest, most painful moments of my life. Because of that, I broke my own rules. I knew that being with him meant I'd be betrayed again, hurt again, but I still leapt in, without hesitation. After the funeral, Daniel brought me back to campus. He didn't let me return to the dorm but settled me in an apartment he'd bought near school. Most of the time, he simply accompanied me to and from class. Occasionally, he'd take me to see a new comedy movie. That New Year's, he didn't go home. Instead, he cooked an elaborate meal and watched the Spring Festival Gala with me as we welcomed the new year. His unfaithfulness was real. His wandering heart was real. His indecision was real. But so was his kindness to me. And at that time, I was too fragile, too lonely. I clung to that bit of goodness. So we dated for another year. This time, Daniel was the one who ended it. He said he was surprised we'd lasted that long, but it had just been too long, with the same woman. He was getting tired. I had graduated and landed my dream job, so I packed up and ended it cleanly. There was a bit of withdrawal, but not too bad. I lived alone for 3 months. Then Daniel came back. He smiled and asked, "What now?" I thought I'd had enough, but turns out, not even close. I suppose I was special to Daniel. Not to flatter myself, but if I weren't, he wouldn't keep coming back when he had so many exes. He wouldn't have crossed mountains and rivers to find a remote little village just to be there for me. For me. He broke many of his own rules too. Did he not love me? It seemed like he did. Did he love me? Maybe not enough. In the end, it was this: we couldn't break apart, and we couldn't let go. I agreed to get back together with Daniel, because I felt that he was, objectively, a decent partner, wealthy, handsome, emotionally attentive. As for his womanizing, well, people grow up, they become jaded. Fidelity between people just doesn't seem that important anymore. Chapter 9. After returning from my hometown, the date Daniel had circled in red on his calendar crept closer and closer. I could feel his nerves begin to fray. It was unusual after so many years together. Our relationship had become so natural, so routine. That nervousness had long since faded away. But this time, his seriousness made even me start to feel a little anxious. I was fairly certain I hadn't guessed wrong, but still feared I was being too self-indulgent. Until the 10th anniversary, when I received a call from Daniel and arrived at the hotel he had reserved. Friends from faraway places appeared one after another, their faces lit with knowing smiles. They placed an elegant veil over my head and handed me a bouquet of flowers. My heart finally settled. I walked along a winding corridor, step by step, until I saw Daniel standing at the end, impeccably dressed. Down on one knee, holding a ring, he proposed to me. It had been a long time since Daniel and I had stayed up all night talking. He used to be staunchly anti-marriage, and honestly, he still acted like a playboy. So I didn't know when, exactly, the thought of marrying me had crossed his mind, and I never knew what my own reaction would be if I were ever proposed to. That was one of the reasons I'd never brought up breaking up with Daniel again. I just wanted to see whether I could make it to that day. Now I had, and I realized there was no excitement, no joy, no tears of happiness. I walked toward Daniel, smiling gently, and reached out my hand. He took my fingers and slid the ring on, his hands trembling slightly. We kissed amidst the cheers and blessings of friends. I held Daniel quietly, and all I felt was calm. This was enough, and it was time to end. The dinner that followed was lively, the private room was packed. Daniel sat beside me, still riding the high of emotion. His grip on my fingers was tight, his palm damp with sweat. Everyone teased him. The die-hard bachelor finally fell into my hands. I rested my chin in my hand, smiling as one by one, his friends came over to toast. Even Colin showed up with a half-smile, downing 2 glasses. Daniel was a little drunk. I reached out and gently pinched his earlobe, teasing, "So, why the sudden proposal?" Daniel, for once, looked vulnerable, nuzzling into my neck like a puppy. "Because I suddenly really wanted to see you in a wedding dress." I let out an "oh." Remembering a chat I'd seen, Daniel had once gone to a wedding with Diana. So that's when the idea took root? His phone lit up on the table. Daniel glanced at me instinctively. I nonchalantly picked up my chopsticks and reached for more food. He quickly typed out a reply. I thought to myself, there's no boundary left between us. One moment he's proposing to me, the next he's messaging his mistress right in front of me. Daniel, if you're really going to marry her, then we're done. I don't love her, but I have to take responsibility. Can't you understand that? No, I don't. Last night you said I was the one you couldn't live without. So you're marrying her. And I'm what? Just a phase? You're the one I love. Isn't that enough? I looked away, took another bite. Daniel picked up a hot towel to wipe his hands, then began peeling shrimp for me. Suddenly, I laughed. He looked at me gently. What's funny? Just thought of something amusing, I said, setting down my chopsticks. I'm going to the restroom. Daniel nodded and placed the last shrimp in my bowl. Don't be long. I lifted my wine glass and finished the last sip of red. Daniel was already back to texting on his phone. As I turned away, I took a wet wipe from my bag and quietly slipped the ring off my finger. It really was a beautiful, expensive ring, but our relationship with it only lasted an hour. My coat still hung on the back of the chair. My purse sat on the seat. The bowl held freshly peeled shrimp, and in the overturned wine glass lay the ring I'd worn for just 1 hour. Daniel. We've talked about breaking up so many times, screaming matches, calm negotiations. But Daniel, those who truly leave never say goodbye. I'm not coming back. Chapter 10. When I was little, I had so many dreams, so many places I wanted to go. So I tried to recall them all, and visited each one. The landscapes were as beautiful as the textbooks described. But people change, expectations change, and now, I just think, yes, it's beautiful scenery, and that's it. Just as people online say, you can't possess youth and the wisdom to understand it at the same time. Exactly 1 month after leaving Daniel, I sent him an email, a formal end to our past. Marriage takes 2, but a breakup, only 1. I closed the laptop and listened to the waves crash against the shore in the quiet of night. That night, I slept especially well. The next morning, I woke up, and for the first time in a long while, I actually felt hungry. I flipped through the menu on the bedside table. Just as I ordered room service, the doorbell rang. I was surprised. How was the hotel this fast? When I opened the door, it wasn't a waiter. It was Colin. At his feet stood a small suitcase. He looked travel-worn, but still raised his hand in greeting. Hey, long time no see. I raised an eyebrow, hands still on the doorknob. How did you find me? When you emailed Daniel last night, didn't you think about the fact that an IP address could be traced? I nodded. I did, but I sent that email to Daniel. Why are you the one who came? I let him have the first chance back then. I wasn't going to let him have a second. I paused for 2 seconds, realizing Colin was referring to the time Daniel came to my village after my mother passed. Colin had asked me more than once if he had shown up first. Would there have been no Daniel and me afterward? But I never believed in Colin's feelings. I never once considered a what-if between us. He placed his suitcase next to mine, then collapsed onto the balcony sofa. You're really ruthless. Just walked away. Clean cut. No hesitation. He muttered lazily. Do you know Daniel's been searching for you for a month? He's losing his mind. I poured him a glass of water. You don't look too sane yourself. He'd clearly cleaned up for this. But the bloodshot eyes couldn't be hidden. Seriously. This is unfair. Daniel screwed up. And you dumped him? Fine. But I've been chasing after you all these years. Loyal as a dog. Never stepping out of line, and you didn't even say goodbye to me. The way he said it. So righteous and self-pitying. Even I started wondering if I was forgetting something. He'd been my simp? I didn't remember that at all. Seeing my silence, Colin sat up a little straighter, resting his chin on his hand in that same cocky, careless tone. Seems like this breakup with Daniel is real. So, seriously, won't you consider me? Why would I jump from one fire pit to another? How do you know I'm a fire pit? I was in a good mood and had no interest in such a discussion. If you came here just to say that, then I'll have to ask you to leave. Colin zipped his lips shut and said no more. I flipped through a magazine for a while, then noticed it had gotten strangely quiet. I turned to look. Colin had curled up on the sofa, head slightly bowed, fast asleep. I could understand why Daniel and I had gotten so deeply entangled, but I never understood why Colin kept holding on to me. Maybe it really is like they say, what you can't have always stirs the strongest desire. But Colin, as Daniel's closest friend, had seen everything, every breakup, every reunion. He'd seen me at my most tender, and at my ugliest. He knew exactly the kind of woman I was. He should have stopped fantasizing about me long ago. Chapter 11. Colin told me that this past month, Daniel had been doing terribly. He'd cut ties with all the women outside, stopped going to work, fallen into a slump. He said Daniel went to many places to look for me, my hometown, cities we'd traveled to together. He even left his number with local residents, promising a reward if they spotted me. I had to admit, Daniel knew me well. When we broke up, my first instinct was to return home. People, when hurt, instinctively retreat to where they feel most safe. Colin said this while casually switching his perfectly cut steak with the untouched one in front of me. I looked down at the plate, its size just right, the cut exactly how I liked it, and fell into silence again. Ever since Colin found me, I realized I was growing quieter and quieter. Unexpectedly, I found that Colin understood me no less than Daniel did. When I asked him about it, Colin replied, "You never gave me a chance. You never looked at me, so, of course, you never knew how much effort I put in for you." I forced a smile, not buying it. No matter how nice the words, Colin and Daniel were the same breed underneath. How could I believe it? "Hey," Colin said, setting down his knife and fork, suddenly serious. "Are you really not going to forgive Daniel this time?" I turned, puzzled. "Forgive what? Didn't you break up with him because he cheated?" "No," I shrugged. "I never thought his cheating was a betrayal, so there's nothing to forgive. Daniel cheated again and again, but at the root of it all, I was the one who gave him those chances again and again. I stopped caring about that a long time ago. If I had, we'd have ended much sooner. Then why? I just stopped wanting anything from him." I looked out the window. The dopamine stopped. I don't crave his touch, his kisses, not even the emotional highs he used to give me. When people are together, they need something from each other: money, company, joy. I no longer wanted anything from Daniel, so we ended. This time, it was Colin who fell silent. He slowly chewed another bite of steak before finally saying, "Nicole." He rarely called me by my full name. Sometimes I feel conflicted. I hated how all these years, your eyes were always on Daniel. He's not better than me in any way. No matter what I did, you never saw me. But now, seeing how easily you let go of him, I'm scared. If even Daniel doesn't matter to you anymore, what does that mean for me, someone who never even compared to him? Aren't you tired of always looking at me? I asked. Didn't you ever want to give up? After all these years of breakups and reconciliations, even your group of friends must be sick of it. Everyone knew the story of Lynn's wife. The same tale told over and over, even the closest people grow weary. I'd heard that after every breakup, Daniel would drag his friends out for a night of heavy drinking. Eventually, his friends must have been thinking, how can you keep going back to the same woman? A one-night stand with an ex is nostalgic, but reconciliation, again and again, that's just pathetic. Colin sighed. Nicole, Daniel's a womanizer. He's slept with dozens, flirts, wild types, fragile ones. You never once asked him if he got tired of you. I'm cleaner, better, and I understand you more than he ever did. Yet you ask me why I haven't gotten tired of you. Chapter 12. I ignored Colin's persistence and followed my original plan to visit all the places I had once dreamed of. Daniel appeared on the final stop of my journey. Under a blanket of snow, I was awkwardly bent over in a thick ski suit, goggles and mask on, trying to fasten my boots. I had no idea how Daniel recognized me in all that gear. But suddenly he was there, kneeling to tie my laces for me. I almost didn't recognize him. He was thinner, his hair longer, dressed in all black, his face clear, youthful. A faint trace of the boy I once fell for lingered in his features. That boy had been the reason I fell for Daniel in the first place. Colin came out of the dressing room, goggles in hand, and saw Daniel crouched in front of me. He gave a crooked, complicated half-smile. Or maybe it wasn't a smile at all. But Daniel didn't even glance at him. He just held my hand and said he wanted to take me skiing. To be honest, I had really been looking forward to this trip. I was born in the warm South, never seen snow this thick, never trudged through it past my knees. Later, I had money but no time. When I saw those photos of Daniel and Diana skiing, I thought, how nice. I want to try that too. That was also the first time I clearly realized Daniel and I wouldn't last. Because I no longer felt the urge to share those experiences with him. I wanted to ski, yes, but I wondered if it would be cold. If falling would hurt. Not, wouldn't it be wonderful if I could ski with Daniel? I stared at the lively slopes outside and asked Daniel if he had read my email. He lowered his eyes and nodded slightly. I asked if he wanted to sit down for a hot drink. If it took a face-to-face conversation to finally end things. Then fine. No more clinging, no more dragging it out. I ordered a hot milk tea for Daniel, a latte for Colin, and just a cup of hot water for myself. Daniel held his milk tea and asked if I was with Colin now. I shook my head. No. Can you promise you'll never be with him? I thought for a second, then shook my head again. No. Living in the moment matters more. The future is too uncertain to speak in absolutes. Once, I believed Daniel and I would make it. I wasn't even afraid of his cheating. What else was there to be afraid of? Was it because you found out about Diana Mao? No, I left you because I simply don't like you anymore. I don't love you anymore. I never understood why men always assumed I left Daniel because I couldn't accept another woman. Daniel looked at me, eyes red, and after a long while, forced out an ugly smile. Nicole, please forgive me one last time. I swear, I won't even look at another woman ever again. I'll give you everything, my loyalty, my love, but I don't love you anymore. I don't want your money. I don't want your loyalty. That's not true. You're just angry, like all the other times we broke up. Daniel took a deep breath, trying to smile. We'll get back together again. We always do. We can't possibly end like this. Daniel, I said quietly, I don't want to change your mind. I just want to ask one question. Ask. Do you remember how long it's been since I cried in front of you? Daniel stared at me, stunned. You love me. You have so many women, flirtatious, gentle, wild. You can't give up all of them for me. But I only ever loved you. I accepted the unfairness, but you can't expect me to live in it forever. Let go. Daniel, deep down, you know too, Nicole is good, but 2, 3, for Diana's will always add up to something better than Nicole. I placed the now lukewarm cup on the table and stood up, ready to enjoy the final leg of my journey. Then Daniel's voice rang out behind me. No, there will never be another woman in this world better than Nicole. If he'd said that a few years ago, I might have cried. I might have turned around and run back into his arms. But now, all I wanted was to step into the snow as fast as I could. Chapter 13. When I got back to the hotel that evening, I ran into Colin, face swollen, bruised, and bleeding. Seeing me look his way, Colin awkwardly tugged his cap lower. Don't look at me. Daniel looks worse. I just shrugged. Indifferent. Maybe I really was some kind of femme fatale who turned brothers into enemies, but no one had ever asked me if I wanted to play that role. Daniel had the sense to leave. Why are you still here? He didn't leave. An ambulance took him to the hospital. I choked on my own spit at that. Colin, half proudly, added, told you, he's worse off than I am. I figured Daniel hadn't called the cops on Colin out of years of brotherhood. But it didn't matter. I had no doubt that soon enough, they'd be back to slapping each other's backs and talking trash about me over beers. I'd had my fun. I booked a return flight. After 2 months of escaping reality, it was time to get back to normal life. I got a new SIM card, started interviewing again, and with a salary bump, began planning to sell my old place and mortgage something bigger. Friends had been upset about my silent disappearance, but when they remembered how tangled my history with Daniel was, they couldn't say much. A few fancy dinners, some designer bags, a night at the bar with a few male models, and our friendship was patched right back up. That's how it goes with women. Simple, unpretentious, and easily healed. Daniel still popped up now and then, never too close, but never far. Once the worst of it passed, he started to recover. His gaunt face filled out, and his energy returned. I believed that, given time and enough pretty, fresh-faced girls his friends would surely introduce, he'd eventually walk out from under the shadow of our breakup. What I didn't expect was to cross paths with Diana after starting my new job. She was the model handpicked by a major client. I was only there to check the shooting schedule, but when our eyes met across the set, it was unmistakable. I had no particular feelings about her. After all, we weren't even truly acquainted. Our only real connection was that we'd slept with the same man. Still, Diana called out to me in front of everyone, "Miss Sue." I frowned slightly. I wasn't fond of people who blurred the line between work and personal grudges. But for the sake of professionalism, I handed her a business card. She couldn't wait. As soon as the shoot ended, she called and invited me out for coffee. From the way she looked at me, it was obvious she saw me as a romantic rival. She blamed me entirely for her breakup with Daniel. Like a proud peacock, she paraded her feathers. She was younger, prettier, wilder in bed. If I hadn't clung to Daniel so shamelessly, she said, they would have already tied the knot. Did Daniel not tell you? I said, Coolly, we already broke up. Her smug smile vanished instantly. Also, I continued. I've known about you and Daniel for a long time, but I never once asked him to leave you. Miss Mao, instead of puffing your chest at me, you'd be better off figuring out how to win Daniel's heart back. I already have a new boyfriend. Chapter 14. Just as I finished speaking, I saw my new boyfriend standing outside the cafe window, waving at me with a bright smile. I scanned the QR code on the table to pay the bill, then stood and left. I met him at a bar, a gambler for a father, a sick mother, a broken man. Perfect. I'd reached the age where I wanted to save lost souls. The fortunate thing was, I finally had the ability to do so. When my friends found out about my new relationship, their reactions varied. Some congratulated me on starting a new chapter. Others were concerned, wondering why I'd chosen someone so obviously not ideal. But really, I just liked the look in his eyes. I also wanted to see if dating a younger man could awaken something in my long-dead heart. The entire date was pleasant, except for my phone, which kept buzzing nonstop. Eventually, I just put it on silent. By 10 p.m., my boyfriend was driving me home. When we got out of the car, he lingered, reluctant to say goodbye, and insisted on coming up for a bit. I gave in. 8-pack abs really are persuasive. We walked out of the elevator hand in hand, only to find Daniel standing outside my apartment door. The hallway was dim, his face lit eerily by the glow of his phone screen. Over and over, he was dialing, each time met with the same automated response: "The number you are trying to reach is currently busy." Still, he kept going. Dial. Hang up. Dial. Hang up. Relentlessly. I sighed, thinking Miss Mao really did have a big mouth. She must have seen my boyfriend and immediately reported back to Daniel. Did she think that if I was seeing someone new, Daniel would suddenly return to her? Daniel turned at the sound of our footsteps. His expression was calm. He looked at me, then at the man beside me. "Who is he?" he asked. My boyfriend, being younger and less experienced, tensed up visibly under Daniel's gaze. I gently patted his back to calm him, then pressed the elevator button to send him home. He looked at Daniel hesitantly, clearly uneasy. "Just chatting with an ex." I told him. "Nothing serious. You understand. Just another cliché scene, grieving lovers and stubborn pasts." Daniel was always a possessive man until he truly gave up on me. It was inevitable that he'd show up once, twice, 3 times. As the elevator doors closed, I saw the smile on my face fade. Daniel's hand clenched, then relaxed. After a long pause, he forced a smile. "You didn't have to break up with me. You know, I really didn't mind if you wanted something new." "That guy, from the bar, right? Is he clean?" "I have better sources. Safer ones. You can play all you want. Just tell me, are you short on cash? I can send some over." I listened quietly to his babble, then reached into my bag, pulled out a cigarette, and lit it. The smoke briefly blurred my vision. I stared at Daniel and said nothing. His forced smile began to collapse. Eventually, it crumbled completely. "Let's not break up, okay?" His voice dropped so low it nearly disappeared. "As long as we stay together, I'll support you no matter what you do." "Daniel, when did you switch careers to pimping?" I asked, expressionless. "Is that what you think I am?" "Nicole, I wish that were what you are." He choked. "Because if that were true, at least I'd have a way to keep you." 10 years. We were together for 10 years. His voice broke. From a few steps away, he looked at me with total despair. "Why is it that just because you say you don't love me, it's over?" It was the first time I had ever seen Daniel cry. His life had always been smooth. He never had a reason to. "Daniel," I said gently, "you know I don't fall in or out of love easily. I'm careful, always have been. I didn't love you that much in the beginning. We started with a joke. I never meant to hold on tight. But you came back. Again and again. You made me believe you were my anchor. And so I loved you deeper and deeper. There was a time I would have done anything for you. But you never accepted that love. You knew how dependent I was. And each time I sunk deeper, a new woman appeared at your side, reminding me to stay sober. You made me feel like my love was worthless, like it never meant anything." I stepped closer, reached out, and caught one of his falling tears. Smiling, not sadly, but peacefully. Look at you now. So torn up. And me? I said. Voice calm. I don't feel anything anymore. Not even a little. I really, truly don't love you anymore. We're done. Daniel. Even forced harmony, I can't maintain it anymore. His voice trembled. Do you hate me? No. I shook my head. I don't hate you anymore. After all this time apart, was there even a second? Just 1 second. When you thought about getting back together with me? I looked him in the eyes and answered without hesitation. No, not once. That night, I was awakened by a call from an unfamiliar number. On the other end was noise and chaos. I gripped the phone, slowly recognizing who it was. I'd blocked Daniel. He must have borrowed someone else's phone. Neither of us spoke, but just before I could hang up, Daniel finally said, I just remembered, there's something I never said. Nicole, I love you. I don't know when it started. Maybe it's too late now, but I still had to tell you. The tears came suddenly, violently, big, heavy, unstoppable. I stared up at the ceiling in the dark, eyes wide open, holding back sobs, and I ended the call before the emotion could pour out. Not because I was moved, not because I missed him, not because I wanted to stay. Just heartbreak. Heartbreak for all the years I endured in silence. Heartbreak because only now did I realize I'd waited so long to hear those words. For so many years, I'd waited quietly for love to finally bloom. And now it had. But my heart? It had already closed. What a pity. In the end, we still missed each other. Chapter 15. Life had to go on. A few days later, I received a message from my boyfriend, tactfully saying he wanted to break up. I called him directly and asked why. He stammered, fumbling for words. So I asked bluntly, who threatened you? Daniel? No. I paused, then asked, Colin? He hung up immediately. I stared at my phone, eyebrow raised. Colin had been uncharacteristically quiet lately. I'd actually thought he'd finally given up on me. Turns out, he was just waiting for the right move. I opened Instagram. One of Daniel's friends had posted a story last night. Wasted away for her. The picture showed Daniel Chan, dead drunk and slumped over a bar counter. No need to guess, it was clearly aimed at me. I zoomed in and noticed Colin in the corner of the photo, looking down at his phone. Busy guy, comforting his heartbroken bro on one hand, threatening the competition on the other. Even a head of state doesn't multitask like this. I scoffed and put my phone away. Sure enough, when I got off work, Colin's car was parked right outside the office. I walked past him without a glance, but he started the car and rolled slowly alongside me, window down, smiling like always. Miss, care to join me for dinner? For the first time, I questioned my decision to buy a home just a 15-minute walk from work. If I'd been commuting by car, I could have avoided this harassment altogether. It was rush hour. His slow cruising set off a chorus of honking behind us. Colin, unfazed as always, wore his grin like armor. Eventually, I caved to the pressure, took a deep breath, and got into the passenger seat. Only then did I notice the bruises, his jawline and cheekbone mottled with purple. What happened to your face? Daniel had already recovered from his hospital stay. No reason Colin should still be battered. Oh, that? He waved it off. Got into another fight a couple days ago. Still with Daniel? Not just him. What? A group brawl? They said you can't mess with a brother's woman. Where'd they suddenly get all that honor and morality from? Colin added, a little aggrieved. And it's not like I wronged anyone, you're the one bullying me. With Colin, I often found myself at a loss for words. He drove us aimlessly around the city for nearly 2 hours during peak traffic. Finally, I sighed. Where exactly are you taking me? Oh, you're finally talking to me? Thought you'd decided to ghost me forever. He grinned. There's this French restaurant, small portions, great flavors. Been wanting to take you there forever. Want to give it a try? I gave a reluctant mem. To his credit, Colin's taste was impeccable. The food did not disappoint. I flipped through the menu. The prices made me wince. Not unaffordable with my current salary, but still painful. Colin slid a membership card toward me. Come whenever you want. Sometimes. I was genuinely stunned by how well Colin understood me. Over dessert, he casually mentioned, Daniel's back in the hospital. Alcohol poisoning. If you got back together with him now, Colin added with a smile, he'd probably give you everything he owns out of gratitude. You'd be dining on caviar daily. I nodded. You're probably right. So being with Daniel again wouldn't be so terrible, would it? If not for love, then at least for money. Are you here as his envoy now? Trying to talk me into going back? I looked at him. Just chatting. He said breezily, it's been a while. You've both cooled off. So, how do you feel now? Colin, I said softly, when I've truly loved someone, I can't reduce that to a transaction. Perfect. He clapped cheerfully. You've never loved me, so it's safe to say you could be with me for the money, right? I stared at him, deadpan. I've got money. Status, same as Daniel. Better body than your little boy toy. So really, why not consider me? Colin was relentless. You got into a new relationship so fast, it was just a way to erase Daniel's shadow. If you date other men, Daniel will keep interfering. But with me? No such problem. I put down my fork, propped my chin on my hand. Why me? Huh? You know I'm not like those women you and your friends pass around. If we actually got together, it wouldn't just ruin your friendship with Daniel. It'd ruin your whole circle. Is it really worth it? I'd asked him this before. His answer back then had been, the things you can't have always haunt you the most. But what if we do get together, however long, however real, and one day you regret it? Blame me for ruining your friendship. Won't I be the one who loses? Colin paused, then said, you free tomorrow? Let's go to the property bureau. Why? I'll give you 2 apartments. That way, if I do regret it later, at least you won't walk away with nothing. Those gifts could be revoked, couldn't they? Nope. I'll have a lawyer prepare everything properly. I wiggled my fingers. I don't want property. I want cash. However much sincerity you've got, show me with that. Finished with dessert, I grabbed my bag and stood, blowing him a kiss. Call me when you're ready. Chapter 16. On my way home, I unexpectedly got a call from a friend. She told me she'd been going through old photos and videos. I laughed and teased her, getting old and nostalgic already? She giggled and agreed. Then her tone shifted. She suddenly asked me about Colin. I'd been with Daniel so long. Our social circles had naturally overlapped. Colin had even attended her wedding, but she didn't know Colin had pursued me. Why bring up Colin all of a sudden? I asked, stepping into the bathroom and placing my phone on the sink. I tied my hair up, ready to remove my makeup. Have you ever considered the possibility? She hesitated. What possibility? That Colin might like you. I froze, staring at my reflection in the mirror. What made you think that? When I got married, the wedding company sent me a bundle of unedited photos from the ceremony. I never really looked through them until today, when my husband pointed something out. He said that in every picture where you and Colin are both present, Colin's eyes were on you. Like 80% of the time, even more than Daniel looked at you. There was a pause, and then I found a video. Do you remember your 25th birthday? When Daniel took us all camping? Of course I remembered. It was one of the more unforgettable birthdays. Daniel had secretly coordinated with our mutual friends to surprise me with a celebration in the mountains, bonfires, tents, fireworks, laughter, and a chaotic cake smearing battle. I never thought about it at the time, but watching the video now, Colin's feelings for you are kind of obvious. She sent me the clip. I honestly couldn't recall the details. I just remembered being happy, wildly throwing cake at everyone, including Colin. At the time, I still loved Daniel deeply, and I was aware of Colin's feelings. I also knew how much Daniel valued that brotherhood, so I always kept my distance from Colin. But that day was an exception. The excitement got to me, and when Colin walked by, I smushed 2 big globs of whipped cream onto his face. In the video, I was beaming. Colin had tried to retaliate playfully, but I dodged. The camera shifted to a scene of Daniel and me laughing, covered in cake. I didn't love Daniel anymore, but those memories still meant something. Maybe because the emotions had faded. This time I noticed something else. Colin, standing on the fringe of the tent, watching me from afar. His face held a softness I'd never seen before. Colin always acted so nonchalant, So careless around me. His feelings always seemed too easy, too convenient, so I never trusted them. But in that fleeting moment, I saw something raw and real beneath the facade. He pulled out a handkerchief and carefully wiped the cream off his hands. But he didn't wipe the cream off his face. I had put it there. In that entire chaotic cake battle, only I had touched his face. And he left it there. I silently closed the video and turned to the photos she'd sent. In one, I was goofing around in a bridesmaid dress, linking arms with the bride and flashing a peace sign. Far behind us, Colin stood, simply watching me. Even in the big group photo, where he stood far away, Colin's head was turned, his gaze aimed directly at me. That wedding? My friend hadn't even invited him at first. Colin had asked to come, because I was a bridesmaid, and Daniel was a groomsman. His excuse? Hey, we're all friends, right? Maybe I'll catch some good luck and finally get out of the single zone. But everyone knew, if Colin truly wanted to stop being single, he wouldn't need luck. A single social media post and women would line up for miles. I remembered how Colin had said, "You never looked at me, never gave me a chance," and so I never saw his heart. Chapter 17. I waited 3 days for Colin. Then he showed up, having liquidated most of his properties, funds, and stocks. Stacks of cash now occupied half my living room. It was the first time I truly understood the physical weight of money. Colin handed me a document, calm and unruffled. "All yours, along with the houses." He added, "I could come up with more, but I don't want to wait any longer. So, can we do installments?" Strangely, I was impressed by Colin's wealth, but not moved by the gesture itself. I'd felt this once before, with that short-lived boyfriend. A side effect of breaking up with Daniel. I'd had too many grand gestures, too many moments that were supposed to mean something. So after clawing my way out of a love that nearly took my life, I knew I might never feel love again. I'd tasted all the bitter and sweet of it already. Starting a new relationship now would just be walking a path I'd already walked. I took Colin's file, flipped to the last page, and signed my name cleanly. No need for installments. "I get it, you're serious." I turned to him and extended my hand. "From now on, you're my boyfriend." I had no interest in heart-wrenching love anymore, but a romance with money, looks, and no deep damage? That sounded nice. Colin didn't take my hand right away. Instead, he stepped closer, eyes searching. I didn't step back, so he leaned in and dropped a feather-light kiss on my forehead, soft as a whisper. "Nicole," he murmured, "thank you for the chance. Thank you for giving me this. You can call it off anytime. I'll accept it, no matter when." I smirked. "What if I end it right now?" He laughed, pulling out his phone. "Then at least let me take a photo. Something to remember this by." I took his phone, tapped the screen, and looked up into the camera. Colin stood behind me, flashing a peace sign next to my cheek. "There, you can post it on Instagram now." I handed it back, and Colin really did. He sat down, thumbs tapping away at the caption box. In the end, he posted only a spinning penguin emoji and our photo together. Almost immediately, both our phones buzzed. We both did the same thing, powered them off. "Well then, girlfriend," he said with a grin, "shall we go on a date?" "Sure, boyfriend," I replied.